My little record button. Wonderful. So welcome to our latest and greatest Search Wizards webinar, our opportunity for continued self-learning and continuing education. We are very honored to have with us today Amybeth Quinn, who is going to be speaking to us on a topic that is near and dear to everybody's hearts, which is being a more productive sourcer with time management and efficiency. Amybeth is well known to many of you. Many of you folks say that you know her personally and have shared networking events and other time with her. Amybeth has been a sourcing and recruiting pro since 2021. Until very recently, she's been at Hewlett-Packard in one capacity or another in senior recruiting management. Previously, she worked for Concur Technologies, Microsoft, AT&T, Wagner Edstrom Worldwide, SearchPath International, Jonathan Scott International. Amybeth has also served as the editor of the Fordyce Letter and for SourceCon. She's on the steering committee and as president for Sourcing 7 and is on the board of directors for the Northwest Recruiters Association. And on a personal note, Amybeth is a proud alumnus of the University of Florida. Go Gators. There's my pitch for you, Amybeth. And she loves water sports of any kind, scuba diving, swimming, water skiing, and wakeboarding. So without boring you with any more of her credentials, I'm going to turn this over to Amybeth, and thank you again for joining us. A quick housekeeping note, folks, you can raise your hand. I'd ask you to save questions or type them in a chat. Amybeth will take a couple of breaks to do a Q&A session with us today. Amybeth, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Dan. Good morning, everyone. First off, definitely want to say thanks to Miranda for asking me to share with you all today. I am honored to be speaking with you and appreciate you taking time away from your busy schedules to be here. As Dan said, my name is Amybeth Quinn. I've been in the world of sourcing and recruiting for about 14 years now. I got my start on the agency side working for an MRI franchise in Cincinnati. And over the years, I've worked in agency and corporate settings, both as an FTE and under contract. I've been an internet researcher, a sourcer, a full cycle recruiter, was the editor for SourceCon with ERD Media for several years. I've seen and experienced a lot and from multiple perspectives. And one of the things that I think really separates good sourcing and great sourcing is organization. Time management is a topic that really doesn't get talked about that much because it's not really fun and exciting. For those of you who are ever competitive athletes, I liken time management to disciplined practice of basics. It's boring, it's tedious and monotonous, but when competition day comes around, the practice and the good habits developed along the way will give you an edge over your competitors. I feel that same way about time management. Being organized and efficient with your time is what will help to separate yourself from the average sourcers and recruiters. So the tools and techniques I'm going to be sharing with you today they're not really groundbreaking or even really that cool, to be honest. You might not learn about any new tools today, but what I hope you will learn is how to use some of your existing tools a little better and even a little differently to squeeze a few extra seconds here and there out of your schedule. So before we dive in, I want to lay out a roadmap of what we'll be covering today so that you can anticipate certain topics. And please, if you have questions, feel free to stop me so that we can get them answered in the moment. Time management is cyclical, and it will always be evolving as your job expands and your responsibilities change and your skill level increases. That said, one of the first things you have to do to pursue more efficiency and better time management is to understand where you're spending your time and how. For anyone who manages a personal budget, one of the first things you know that you have to do in order to rein it in is to track where you're spending money and how often. For our conversation today, your time is your currency, and it needs to be tracked and accounted for. Once you understand your time, you can then start taking some steps to put it to better use. Again, much like a financial budget, reining in unnecessary expenses and putting your money to better use is what helps you prepare for your future. By optimizing your time at work, you can become more efficient in your activities and free up your time. This is more time that you could build, pursue further education, or however you choose to make the most of it. And finally, once you have taken some steps to optimize your work, it's crucial to keep tabs on what you're doing and validate your productivity. This honestly is what I think truly separates good and great. Tracking, documenting, and analyzing your work will absolutely help you to rise above average. To understand your own productivity metrics and proactively be prepared to talk about them at any time is really important. It's something I tell my team, in addition to always doing the right thing and making sure that you document it. By tracking your own work, whether you do it as a requirement by your employer or whether you do it on your own, you'll be able to find trends, analyze where you're strong versus areas where you need more work. And if the situation arises, you'll be able to prove that you did exactly what you were supposed to do. Call it CYA or whatever you want. Tracking and documentation will help you to discover your true potential, which can then lead back to understanding your time better, and more optimization, and so on and so forth. It's a knowledge and growth circle that will help you to continually improve. So first, let's talk about understanding your time. The first step to understanding where you spend your time is to admit being distracted during the day. I mean, we're all human, we all get distracted and by a multitude of different things. You know what actually distracts me is my email. I'm like Pavlov's dog when it comes to email notifications, and I feel like I have to stop what I'm doing just to make sure there's no emergency that needs to be addressed. So, you know, let's face it, as sourcers and recruiters, we're prone to squirreling. My husband even gave me a t-shirt with Doug the dog on it that says, "Keep calm and squirrel." So I want to take a minute here and have an interactive discussion and talk about some distractions. What are some of the things that cause you to squirrel each day? Go ahead and come off mute and let's share a couple of things.
I think meetings tend to kind of interrupt the sourcing day. I mean, they're necessary, but you sort of have to be heads down when you're sourcing, and if you have too many meetings.
Meetings. Okay, I heard meetings. Yeah, definitely. Meetings to talk about meetings to plan more meetings. Definitely distracting. What are some other things? Type them in the chat if you'd rather not take yourself off.
I would say Teams for me, because it's always like how do I say it? It's always like an urgent request that you have to, you know, drop what you're doing and finish.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
How about for those of you who work in an office, the drive-bys? Awesome to talk down doing sourcing and somebody, you know, swings by your desk to have a conversation. Yeah, unscheduled phone calls. Yep, definitely. All right, awesome. So, you know, great. Acknowledgement here is you know, a big first step. So let's address another elephant in the room, resource usage. How many of you actually do go first to your ATS when you get a new search to see who's expressed interest already that might be a good fit, or ask your hiring manager for referrals? I mean, let's face it, most of us are excited by deep web searches. Turning over rocks in the dark corners of the web to find the unfindable prospects is thrilling. And when you get one of them to offer stage, it's like a badge of honor. But how often does it happen? I mean, are we making the most of the resources our companies pay for? So the graphic on the right here shows a suggested approach to search, starting first with the referral network, whether it's your own or your hiring managers or a combination of the two. Moving out from there is ATS search. You know, these are individuals who at one point had either been interested in your company or had been in communication with someone from your company. A CRM would also be included here. Moving further out is paid resources. I mean, you might as well put to use the tools your company pays money for. From there, we look at free structured resources. And by this, I mean free sites like Indeed, if you have a free LinkedIn account, local or professionally affiliated free resume databases, or other resources that have more structure around the search capabilities. And honestly, the last place I suggest going to is the deep web, because it's the most time intensive and generally yields the least viable results. Generally, of course. Occasionally, you're going to hit a gold mine here. So finally, when you're preparing to understand your time, it's good to start thinking about things you can do to mitigate your daily distractions. This will be an activity to return to after you've taken the time to analyze your daily activities. But it's always good to start this practice beforehand. So if you work from home, do you have a dedicated office or a part of your home that's designated for your workspace? Do family members disturb your flow during the day, or do you have a system of quiet time? Do you work off of a strict calendar with time clocks? Do you build in break times during the day? Do you start or end your workday with exercise? So start thinking about these things that you can do proactively to claw back some of your productive time. Let's start diving into the meat and potatoes then of understanding your time. My personal opinion is that the best way to do this is to track your daily activities. You can do this manually by writing down what you do in a notepad. But honestly, I think there's more opportunity to fudge your numbers this way, and it's really important to accurately understand where your time's going. When you're manually tracking activities, you're being more thoughtful of what you're doing, and the goal here is to see what you are really getting distracted by. There are several good ways to digitally capture your time usage that I'll list out in a little bit, but the one I want to get into more detail about is called Rescue Time. The reason I like this best is because it works in the background to passively track you, and it works on both desktop and Android devices. Rescue Time is web-based, and it collects data on the sites you visit and the programs you use, and it keeps track of the amount of time that you're actually using them. What I really like about it is that you can set up goals and view reports and dashboards of summaries where you spend your time. So Rescue Time's basic functionality is free. If you want more robust reporting, analytics, and some other features, there's a paid subscription for $54 a year. But you can accomplish the activity tracking you need to understand your time with the free account. So you can view daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly dashboards, and also look at weekly reports. With the free version, you can look back 3 months into your past. I'm showing what my June dashboard looks like here. You can see from the screenshots that in the month of June, I had a lot of time in Outlook as well as in Link or Skype, which is how we do phone calls. So it's a good thing to be on the phone, but that's also an awful lot of time in Outlook. In this particular month, I also spent a lot of time in Workday and SharePoint, which was very productive for the project I was working on in June. I mentioned earlier that one of my biggest distractions is email. So one of the goals that I created for myself within Rescue Time was to spend less than 3 hours a day in email. I know that doesn't sound like a really awesome goal, but we're talking baby steps here. Looking at the two comparative goals in the bottom left, you'll see that I failed miserably in June, but I redeemed myself in July. The one negative thing about Rescue Time is that it tracks only the application in which you're currently actively working. So for example, I would imagine that many of you have multiple windows open at any given point in time, perhaps multiple monitors or windows tiled across your monitor. Whatever application or website you're currently actively clicked into is tracked. So let's say that you use Skype to make a phone call, and then you minimize it to click into the prospect's LinkedIn profile, or you open up a OneNote to start taking your screen notes. Your time will be counted just in the active window. To my understanding, Rescue Time is actually working to fix this. But regardless, I would highly recommend signing up for a free account so that you can start tracking your activity and learn about your habits. Here are a few other recommendations of programs that you could also try. They're all free for basic functionality, and they have premium features that can be accessed with paid subscriptions. Rescue Time and Chronos are passive trackers, which I think provides the most accurate snapshot of what you're doing. Chronos also has a pretty cool UI and the capacity to track other things like commute time, which is kind of awesome. Hours and Toggle also look interesting, but they each require a little bit more manual start and stop manipulation. Ultimately, choose one that you feel comfortable with and take it for a test drive for at least a week. I would suggest a month though, to see what you learn about your habits. All right, so now that we've covered understanding your time, are there any questions about this before we move forward to the next topic? I'm going to take that as a no. So let's spend some time talking about optimizing your workflow. I feel like often our daily schedules can take on the feeling of a really confusing maze of train tracks. Without being equipped to switch quickly or plan ahead for the trip, we risk heading down the wrong track and possibly a head-on collision. We need a switch or multiple switches to manage our work, ensure that we're headed in the right direction, and avoid any unnecessary detours. This part of working on time management will be ongoing. You'll constantly be adding responsibilities to your function, and you'll need to be able to make adjustments on the fly in how you tackle tasks. Some things to think about at this point are what steps can either be combined or completely eliminated from the workflow to speed things up. Also, how can you simplify your documentation process so that you can do it quickly and also be able to locate your information easily? What are some things to do to help you move forward with ease from task to task and to stay focused while you do certain activities? I also want to throw out at this point that templates are not evil. You just have to use them appropriately. You can use templates and customize them at the same time. I see a lot of discussion out there around poor perceptions from candidates who receive crappy recruiter template emails. Caution certainly should be used with templates, but if you use them properly and at the right times, they can be a huge time saver. And the first tool I want to start with is Outlook. Outlook is a tool that most of us have free access to for email communication and calendaring. For those of you on the call who use Gmail, sorry, most of the focus here, at least for the next few minutes, is going to be on Outlook functionality, but there will be some suggestions I'll make that you'll also be able to use or that likely Gmail also offers. Like I said at the beginning, sometimes the tools we already have access to can be the most helpful in time management. Microsoft's Office suite of tools, quite frankly, offers so many options that I would imagine that the general user only uses about 15% of the actual capabilities. Some of the Outlook tools that I use for time optimization include the Ignore feature, color-coded calendar time blocks, quick parts, and delay delivery. I've also listed signatures here as well because I know a lot of people find signatures very useful when doing templates. I don't disagree with that, but I think there's a better way, which we'll get to. So let's start first with a very simple and extremely helpful tool called the Ignore button in Outlook. Some people know about this, but the majority of folks that I've spoken to either have never used it or didn't even know about it. So what Ignore does is allow you to mute unwanted or annoying email threads and prevent future related emails from hitting your inbox. So think about it like this. Have you ever been caught in a never-ending email chain of reply alls? I have heard horror stories of email threads that went on for hundreds of responses before HR finally got involved and threatened disciplinary action for anyone who continued to respond. Usually this shows up more commonly in like kudos to a team member, birthday wishes, you know, funny pictures and things like that. Most of us, you know, want to send a, you know, like an individual personalized acknowledgement and move on. And the Ignore function will help you to do that and remove consecutive reply alls from your email. I'm going to share a quick little video to show you how to do this.
I like having a clean inbox, so when I'm included in a conversation that does not apply to me, I remove it from my box by ignoring it. The original message and all subsequent replies are sent to my deleted items folder. Future responses to this message will not appear in my inbox.
So really simple, very, very easy little tool to use there to help you grab some of your time back so that you're not constantly going back and deleting all of these unwanted messages. All right, so in my opinion, there's no better or easier way to guard and optimize your time than to use a free tool that all recruiters and sourcers have access to, which is your calendar. By keeping your calendar organized, you'll better be able to protect your time and keep yourself focused. I personally use Outlook and I color code categories to visualize my time blocks in the calendar. If you're sourcing for multiple industries or clients, you could use color coding for different teams, specific functional profiles, or whatever makes most sense to help keep yourself organized. And if you don't use Outlook, pretty much every calendar application will allow you to color code categories and do this. One of the recommendations I have here to really help optimize your time is consider delegating certain days or time blocks within days to focus on specific things. For instance, every sourcer and every recruiter needs to have time blocks marked for focused sourcing time. And those times should be guarded, and you should avoid canceling or scheduling other things on top of them at all costs. Otherwise, and I'm sure many of you have had this happen, you get to Friday and discover you didn't spend a lot of time proactively sourcing. Instead, you were putting out brush fires or managing interview processes or other things that are not really at the core of your function. You can also consider designating certain days for screening certain functions or working on behalf of certain hiring managers or clients. This way, you won't be constantly shifting your thought process from software developers to solution architects to QA analysts, product managers, and so on and so forth. If you try to do all of your PM interviews on the same day, or at the same time each day, you'll establish patterns and habits for yourself. And the bonus here is that you'll actually see your objectivity increase. Think about this. If you only interview QA analysts from 8 to 12 on Wednesdays and Thursdays, you're doing back-to-back screens on the same function. So you'll really help to sharpen your evaluation skills and be overall more objective during your screens. This is why on the agency side of things, managers like to see new recruiters drive high volume with very little downtime. It's not only good for productivity, but it's also a good learning mechanism to help them become better at evaluating candidates. So quick parts are one of my favorite tools within Outlook. My good friend Sarah Fleischman introduced me to them several years ago, and they're an incredible time saver. An Outlook email quick part is a block of text that you can insert into an email message. You can use quick parts for information that you frequently share. So instead of retyping the information each time, you can type in a short quick parts phrase that will call up the quick part, and when you hit enter, it will paste the whole text block into the body of your email. Remember earlier when I said signatures are fine for email templates, but there was a better way I would share? This is it. I mentioned at the beginning of this section that one way to optimize your work is to reduce the number of clicks. If you use signatures to insert blocks of text, you still have to navigate up to signatures, find the one you want to use, and click on it. If you use quick parts, all you have to do is start typing in a quick parts text phrase to the body of an email. So I'll play this little video I recorded and show you how this works when responding to prospect outreach. So here we have an email message that we would like to respond to. So clicking reply opens up a new email message. While this message is getting typed out, I'll explain where you can find quick parts here. If you look up at the very top, you've got file, message, insert options, format tag, text, and review. So once you have the text that you want to create a quick part with, you'll highlight it and then go to insert, and you'll find quick parts up there. The nice thing about quick parts is, you know, it's just a little phrase that you type, and you'll get a little activity or like an action box that will start, that will pop up once you get to a certain point in that text. And it'll say this, you know, this is a quick part. Hit enter to utilize this quick part. All right, so this message is just about done getting written. What we're going to do is not highlight the greeting or the signature, and we're just going to highlight the general text there. All right, so it's highlighted. We're going to go to insert, and there's quick parts, and you're going to go down to the bottom and hit save selection to quick part gallery. Name up at the top there is that quick text, so keep it simple, something that you'll remember, screen requests. And you can also have different categories here. And it's as easy as that. We've created the quick part. We can send this initial email, and then we'll move on to the next response that we want to do. So we also want to schedule time with this person. So we'll type our quick salutation, and then we'll start typing screen response and see what happens. Little text box, hit enter, and there's your quick part. It's as simple as that. We can go ahead and hit send and just continue on using this quick part. Very, very simple. Remember how I said templates aren't always evil? This to me is the perfect example of a non-evil template. The only limitation here is that quick parts are text only, so you won't be able to use this to send graphics or memes. You can, however, save links into quick parts, which is nice. The last Outlook tool I want to show you today is called Delay Delivery. This is an especially great tool to use if you haven't been blessed to have access to a CRM that will auto-schedule follow-up correspondence to prospects for you. Inevitably, we'll all come across a prospect who timing is just not right at the moment for them, but they do want to stay in touch. It's good to nail down a time frame for follow-up in those initial conversations, but you have to make sure that you do actually follow up at that appointed time. And what delay delivery allows you to do is prevent a message from being sent until a designated date or time. What I recommend doing is writing up your follow-up email immediately after finishing your initial call so that you don't forget any context from your conversation, and then schedule it out for future delivery. You can combine using quick parts if you want here, and choose delay delivery to send it for the future. For anybody who does high volume or intern hiring, this can be a really helpful tool. So this is how it works. We're going to just quick paste some text in here. It's been a few months since the last time we spoke. So we're looking at about a 3-month time frame here. You're going to go to options and hit delay delivery. We're going to go to delivery options and make sure that do not deliver before is checked, and then determine your time frame. We're going to bump this forward about 3 months to the end of November, and we're going to schedule this to be sent at 7:30 in the morning before this individual's workday starts. And it's as easy as that. The scheduled emails show up in your outbox. If for whatever reason you end up following up with somebody before the appointed time for the message to be sent, just make sure you delete it out of your outbox since you no longer need to send it. All right. Aside from Outlook tools, I did want to mention an additional calendar tool called TimeTrade. It's not a free tool, but you can use it for free for 2 weeks as a trial, and it's only about $59 a year and well worth the investment. What TimeTrade can do is help you organize your calendar by day or by time blocks, like what I was mentioning earlier, to help you keep your schedule more organized. It also puts some ownership of scheduling conversations on your prospects, and this will cut down significantly in the back and forth of trying to schedule things with others. So TimeTrade will sync directly with an Outlook calendar, and the good news for anyone using Gmail is that it works there as well. It will sync with your calendar to show time slots that are already busy, and anything that gets scheduled through TimeTrade will automatically show up in your calendar to block that time. By including a link to your TimeTrade availability within the body of an email, prospects can pick a convenient time for them that's available on your schedule. TimeTrade's calendar plugin will allow you to send quick links on the fly to people. That way, you can send customized time choices to individuals to schedule meetings with you. Also, if you prefer, you can combine quick carts with TimeTrade links as well. By creating specific job function templates, you can automatically place blocks of time with a scheduling link for that function, as well as any other information you'd like to share with your prospect. TimeTrade also allows for sending email invitations from right within the tool. So let's walk through a quick workflow of setting up a calendar block and then check out what it looks like to a recipient. So this is a specific activity I created for a big data software engineer. I want to change this to a 45-minute time frame. So I'm just going to change it in the subject line, which recipients will see. And I'm going to change the duration to 45 minutes. A nice little feature here is blocking off time after the appointment for yourself and your calendars so that you can compile your notes and ship them off to whoever needs to receive them. All right, and then you want to make a decision on how you'll meet with people in person or by phone. You can include a welcome message if you want, and this will be the first thing that recipients will see when they click on your customized link. So this changes to 45 minutes. And then you can also ask invitees to answer a question, provide additional info, anything you want there. So now what we want to do is add some appointment availability. There will be some times that already populate where I want to add a couple of additional ones. And if you see up at in the toolbar, preview times that would be offered from my personal calendar. You can also take a look at what's available and what's not in your calendar. You can grab chunks of time like we're doing here, and you can also schedule this for every week at the same time, which will help with your consistency that we talked about earlier. So let's take a look at what this looks like on the recipient end. We're going to grab this customized link. I'm going to open it up in a new window. And so here's our welcome message, first thing that the recipient sees. And there's the calendar with the available time slots. So TimeTrade already took into account some scheduled conflicts that I had already on my calendar for Friday, and removed those time slots from my availability so that I don't double book myself. Hit continue. And then here's where all of the personal information can be added in. If somebody types in a link, it will show up in your calendar as a hyperlink too, which is nice. Confirmation, and this is the confirmation page for the recipient, and this is what your calendar ends up looking like. So you get a new appointment for 45 minutes, excuse me, for an hour, even though the recipient only gets a 45-minute calendar event, but we scheduled a 15-minute time block. There's that hyperlink for the GitHub account and all of the information that I need to know that was requested of the recipient. Great tool, major time saver. All right. Finally, I would like to talk about work optimization through appropriate screening documentation. Whether your ATS has an official method of storing candidate screen notes or not, I personally believe it's vitally important for sourcers and recruiters to keep accurate records themselves in case you ever need to produce documentation. I know there are many methods of doing this, but I would like to focus on my own personal method and one that I think provides the easiest way to duplicate and search, and that's OneNote. Again, OneNote is a free resource to those who use Microsoft's Office suite of tools. And I'll get to Google Tools in just a moment, but I want to start with OneNote. The way that I personally use OneNote is to keep tabs on everything and anything where I need to be taking notes. And that pretty much covers everything that I do for work. By the way, because note-taking allows me to refer back to intake meeting agreements and accountabilities with accuracy. What I'm showing you here is a sample of how I have organized OneNote. I have a notebook for specific business units and hiring managers. And within that notebook, I have different tabs for hiring managers and different things that I do with them. So I'm going to switch to web OneNote for some more examples here. So I have a platform services notebook, and we'll just walk through some of the examples of the way that you can organize and categorize OneNote. Each of the top level categories there is a notebook section, and each of the first and last names there are individual tabs. And I use that for organizing hiring managers. Here's a master template that I keep so that I can just quick copy and paste stuff. I have an intake meeting template with a few basic questions that I would ask any new hiring manager for any new requisition that I'm working on. And by the way, I take notes for all intake meetings, even if I've worked on the role hundreds of times, because it's good to have that documentation. Here's a sample candidate screen template. The reason I do this is because it helps me with consistency, but it also helps me with speed because I can just copy and paste this real quickly and get going on the candidate screen instead of having to sit around and think about, oh, what am I going to ask questions on this time? So here's a real example of a hiring manager that I've worked with in the past. This hiring manager was new to the company, so I also took some notes in our intake meeting on him personally. And I have all of these notes that I can refer back to when I do candidate screens and talk to candidates about the hiring manager, about the team, about the work, about the actual products that they're working on. And if you notice down there at the very bottom, I've also listed out people that they'll be interacting with a lot, and also a final interview group selection. So this I send to hiring managers after we're done with the intake meeting as an accountability. Hey, this is what we talked about. Any changes need to be made? And what we're looking at right now is a sample candidate screen. At the very top, I've got the basic name, company title, location, what the salary requirement is. All information that I can really grab very quickly, and I'll show you how you can grab this information and send it very, very simply to whoever needs to have this information. Take a look at another example here. Again, name, location, title, prompt, and comp expectations. I've got some highlights and concerns there. So if hiring managers want the Cliff Notes version of my screen notes, they can just look at the top. And if they want to dive into the weeds, they can put my full screen notes below. And then here's a sample email template that I used for one particularly difficult job that I worked on before. All right, so what I want to do next is show you how simple it is to duplicate templates and create new pages for candidate screens and intake meetings. It's as simple as right mouse click copy and right mouse click paste. And then all you have to do is change the title of the new page. I recommend having some kind of uniformity to the titles of this, on the subjects of the intake meetings that you use, as well as the screens for your candidates. That way it'll be easily searchable. And again, right mouse copy, right mouse paste. All you have to do is change the name at the top. And we'll go ahead and fill out the first few lines here for a sample candidate. And then we'll switch over to the OneNote desktop application. And I'll show you how easy it is to share this information forward with either hiring managers or your recruiting and sourcing partners that need to receive screen notes. All right, so we're going to switch over to OneNote desktop application. Here's our sample candidate. All you need to do to email this information is to go to the top toolbar and hit email page. What that's going to do is bring up a brand new email. It's going to take the subject line from the page and drop it into the email subject line, which you can customize, with like screen notes or candidate submission or whatever you want to do. I recommend, again, being consistent with how you do this so that it's easy for the hiring managers to search and it's easy for you to search within your email. One thing that I don't have shown here is if you can attach documents within OneNote pages. And if you do that, when you click on send email, it will automatically attach that document to your email. So, if you have a resume, you can actually drop it into the OneNote page here and hit email page, and it'll automatically attach to that page. So, you can see flipping from web app to desktop is pretty simple, and there's also great search functionality here as well. If you develop an organized system of labeling and categorization for yourself, you'll easily be able to find any notes that you capture within OneNote. Plus, and I think the biggest benefit of using OneNote, to me at least, is your information gets auto-saved. So no need to worry about a Word doc crashing on you or a lightning storm taking out your power and you losing all of your hard fought for work. All right, so we'll move on to Google Docs. So there we go. Google Docs can be used similarly, and I want to go over a form feature using Google Docs that will really help to save some time for high volume projects. Let's say that you have to interview interns. You only need to do about 15-minute initial screens with them, but you want to uniformly capture the interview details and be consistent in the questions you ask. This is great also if you have multiple people using the same screen for the same or similar roles. You can easily create a form using Google Docs that will serve as a screening tool and help you capture information within a spreadsheet, which you can then either mail merge or refer to however you choose. So let's walk through a simple form creation. So you're going to go to your Google Drive, hit New, and find Forms, which will launch a new Google form for you to fill out. The nice thing also about Google Docs is they also do autosave. If you see in the top left there, it's already starting to save. Like every couple of seconds, it will save your information. And there are multiple response mechanisms that you can choose. You can also make certain questions required. So last name, multiple choice. You can do checkboxes, drop downs, response grids, and all kinds of different things. So I'm actually going to speed through this. All right. So here's our last question. And then we will do a preview of what we just created. So to do that, you're going to go up to the little eyeball at the top, click on that, and it's going to launch a new window and show you a preview of the form you just created. So, consider this as either a screening template for you to use, or you can even create a form to send to prospects if you would prefer to do it that way. This also works, like I said, wonderfully with groups of sourcers or recruiters who are working together on a project, and you want to make sure that everybody is using the same screening questions. We'll fill out a sample form here, hit submit, and we're going to go back to the form, and it already shows that response is captured. Right? So you can look at the summary or at individual responses, but what we're going to go to is the actual spreadsheet response capture, which is the little green box to click on, and that's going to launch an opportunity to create a new spreadsheet where all of the responses will be captured. And there's all of the information. The questions get dropped into column headers, and you can capture a ton of information very simply this way. All right. So one other tool that I like, which I don't have time to cover today, is called Evernote. Definitely look into it if OneNote or Google Docs are just not for you. And that's it as far as optimizing your work. Are there any lingering questions before we press on to the last topic for today?
Folks, if you want to type your question in a chat, I will acknowledge you, or you can unmute yourself to ask Amybeth a question.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and press forward. The last topic we'll cover on time management and efficiency has to do with tracking metrics. Everybody's favorite topic. And actually, in recent years, I've become quite the data nerd. I have really seen how metrics can tell a more holistic story of the entire hiring process. When you understand the metrics to which you are held accountable for and are able to analyze and derive business data from them, you make the leap from a good sourcer to a great one, in my opinion. 3 things to keep in mind when validating your productivity. You need to know what success looks like in your specific role, whether you're measured by number of hires, number of offers, or qualified candidates presented. Knowing what you're held accountable to and consequently keeping track of where you find your prospects and comparing that to the amount of time you spend with those resources will help you to prove yourself as a valuable part of the hiring process. You need to be able to see the differences in your success when filtering by hiring managers, sources of discovery, job functions, and a lot of other factors. You'll come to find out that some hiring managers reject more candidates than others. And knowing that you can either consult to see where you're missing the mark in your search efforts, or you can focus your efforts elsewhere where you're finding greater success. By bringing this kind of valuable data to your intake and calibration meetings, you become a more valuable consultative partner. So how does time management and efficiency really come into play here? If you can prove with data to your business where things work and where they don't, you will have the opportunity to help steer the process to a more efficient path, thus helping you do better work at a faster pace and with more reward. In my role as a sourcing manager, I measure success as a mix of both qualitative and quantitative metrics. I maintain a dashboard for my team that shows where our sourcing efforts are focused by resource, as well as how we're doing with our success metrics. Additionally, we include information that ties our efforts directly to the business's overarching goal, which is making hires, by showing how achieving our success metrics ultimately leads to the business achieving its success metrics. Many of you may have some great CRM tools that can automatically capture data like this. That's awesome for you if you're blessed with that kind of automation. However, not everybody is going to be willing or able to track with this kind of detail. So in the last 10 to 15 minutes today, I want to show a couple of different ways that you can individually document and track your efforts. This way, you will always be able to point to your successes and see where things need a little tweaking. So first, let's start by taking a look at what Google Docs has to offer. I recommend, in this case, starting off by building a new form in which you can easily collect information and drop it into a spreadsheet. So here's another Google form that I've pre-created for our demonstration purposes today. We'll just scroll down to the bottom and take a look at the different, fields here. So sourcer name, requisition number, hiring manager, job title, candidate name, obviously, company, source of discovery, and then we have some date fields here. Date presented, so when did you actually submit this candidate? You know, month presented, which is going to be helpful for tracking later on. And then date of response. It's good to know when you received a response from the hiring manager. You can take a look at how long it takes them to get back to you with that information and offer decision. So we'll take a quick preview of this, and we'll do a sample entry to see what this looks like. All right, so we'll put in a rec number and a fake hiring manager named Tough Cookie, a job title of head baker. We'll fill in some additional information here. So again, what we're looking at here is a form where you can capture your presentation information. And doing it in a form format will ensure that you're capturing the same format of information every single time. What this avoids is inconsistency in the data that you are capturing for yourself. Presented, and then native response. And Google Forms either lets you manually enter the date or choose it from the calendar, which is kind of nice. And hit submit. Now with this particular form, one of the settings that you can adjust is editing your response. So for something like this, it's good to allow yourself to edit your responses so that if you have additional information to add, like an offer was extended and accepted, you can go back. So we'll come back here and look at the responses. Now, Google Forms provide you with a small amount of graphical data analysis, like here. But what we're really going after is being able to pivot this information by creating a response destination in the spreadsheet. So clicking on that little green box again, here we have our data collection, our response collection spreadsheet. Right, there's all of our information that we just captured. All right, so to create the pivot table, or excuse me, we're going to go back here and I added a few extra responses here just so that you can see what this looks like in the form data collection space. So again, it's kind of limited as far as the graphical representation of your work. And I will also say here that these responses will only, this information only shows up for responses selected by the form. If you go and add information directly to the spreadsheet, it won't show up here, which is why I prefer not to use that. All right, so we're going to go up to data, and then we're going to find pivot table. And so it's asking what data. So what you're going to do is highlight all of the columns that you want to be able to pivot. So you click and drag over all of the columns that have data that you've collected, and then hit OK. And this is where you can start building your pivot table to analyze your metrics. You've got a bunch of different selections here on the right-hand side. So we're going to start by pivoting based off of a requisition number. The value there is going to show like how many rows have data in the candidate name that are tied to the requisition number. And we can add filters. If we want to filter by source, we can do that here as well. That way, if we just want to look at specific sources and see how many people that we presented based off of those sources. Or if we want to just look at the responses or the presentations that were accepted, we can do that here as well. And you can add multiple filters if you want to. Okay, and I would encourage, definitely getting in and playing around with this. So we add a column field here to take a look at the month presented. That way we can get a little bit of a chart going with hiring managers to show, the months in which candidates were presented to each of them with the accepted response. So, very interesting tool, very great way to really keep track of your productivity here. But as you can see, there are a few limitations with using Google Docs to analyze your metrics. My personal preferred method is building an Excel spreadsheet and then using slicers within a pivot table to get some extra visualization. So let's use the same data that was captured with the Google Doc for comparison purposes. So we've got our data. We're going to go up to Insert at the top and select Pivot Table. And similarly, we need to select our table range. So we're going to grab all of the columns that have data we want to pivot with. Choose a new worksheet that's going to pop this information into a new tab. And then very similar to the Google Docs, we have columns that we can slice and dice. So we're going to do the same requisition number pivot to start off with. Candidate name is going to get dragged down to values. What that's doing is counting the number of cells tied to the requisition numbers that have data in them. You can click on value field settings to change this if you have number fields and you want to sum them. But because candidate name is not a number field, we want to do a count of cells with data in them. All right, so we've added 2 columns on month presented. Or, nope, I guess we didn't. What we're going to do is insert slicers. So that's up at the top under Pivot Tools. All right, and what the slicers do is give you a better visualization of what of the data that you're looking at. So you're going to have these little boxes here that you can slice and dice a variety of different pieces of information. And you'll see as you select things within a slicer, the available selections and other slicers changes. So as we're clicking through, the months presented or the sources, we get a better idea of the information that we've collected. So for Tough Cookie, we only did work in August. As you can see. For Charm City Cakes, we have 2 candidates and we've got 2 different sources of discovery. So we're going to do one more pivot table. So again, go to Insert and hit Pivot Table. You're going to, again, select your columns. And what we're going to do with this pivot table is take a look at total number of presentations and add response to columns so that we can look at accepted versus rejected. So we've added sourcer names to the rows. So we're going to grab response and drop that into the columns. And then we're going to grab candidate name and do a count. And see how that looks. This way we actually see, for this individual sourcer, we have 15 total presented candidates. 12 of those were accepted and 3 were rejected. We'll add back some slicers to provide a little bit of additional context here. And just play around with it a little bit. Again, one of the things I like the most about the slicers is how it updates the information information that's available in the other slicers as you're clicking through different selections. And you can click multiple things if you want. Or you can just look at one or two different tips. So if you hit the control button and click on different selections, you can really see what's going on here. Different sources if you want to look at Facebook and LinkedIn. All right, so I know I've thrown an awful lot of information at you guys today. So I want to quickly summarize what I hope you will take away from this presentation. First, make sure you understand where you're spending your time. Learn about some of your habits and the distractions that are keeping you from reaching your full potential. Abraham Lincoln once said, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend 4 sharpening my axe. Put the time in upfront to set up your systems and processes properly. In the long run, doing it right the first time is going to save you loads of time and energy. And lastly, always keep track of your work and your successes and be aware enough of your metrics to be able to use them during calibrations and intakes to drive more efficiency with your business partners. I think actually we have, I had an extra bonus tool. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get to this, but I don't really consider this a productivity tool, but it's a really cool plugin that you can use whether you use Outlook or Gmail. It's called Sidekick by HubSpot, and it's an email campaign tracker that lets you see when your emails are being read and when links are clicked. So like I said, not really a time management or productivity or efficiency tool, but it's neat to see when your prospects look at your email and don't respond. Perhaps that indicates a timing issue. Or you can also observe when prospects reopen your email after a few weeks. That indicates it's time for you to do a follow-up message. So I guess in a sense it is kind of an efficiency tool because you can make educated guesses on when would be the best time to follow up with prospects. And for client use, I love this because it keeps your hiring managers honest and accountable to timely responses by knowing when they have opened your email. So they can't ever say to you again, well, I didn't get your email. Actually, I saw you open it last week. There's a link in here for a free month trial. If you click on that, it will get you set up with a month of being able to track and see how this really works for you. There's another tool that my good friend Susie Tonini shared recently called Yesware that also allows for a free trial. If Sidekick is not your thing, definitely check that out and give it a try. So I hope today has been a good use of your time. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions, any suggestions for time management that you do personally, or anything else that you want to talk about with regards to sourcing. I really appreciate your attention today. And Dan, I think we've actually got about 3.5 minutes or so if anybody has any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Amybeth. Wow, that was tremendous. I don't see any chat messages there. Folks, would you either chat your message and I'll read it or unmute yourself? Amybeth has graciously offered to spend a few extra minutes, so please feel free. I'm sure some folks have questions.
And Dan, if there are no questions, I would love to get a pulse check from attendees to see, if there are new things that have been learned today that they feel could be applied to workflow.
Wonderful. Speaking for myself, I'm going to try a number of these, especially the quick parts. For me, was especially useful. Folks, does anybody have anything they'd like to contribute here of what they learned today and what they see as being particularly applicable to their own jobs and assignments?
That's great. Google Forms. Yep. Outlook tools for somebody who's more familiar with Google Docs. Quick parts. Yep. Knowing about them and using them. That's great. The OneNote information. I'm really glad to see that. My teams have had OneNote drilled into them because I've started using it a few years ago and I haven't looked back since. Just a fantastic organization method.
There's a question from Liz, Amybeth, about whether OneNote can sync folder docs into it like Evernote.
I want to make sure that I understand the question appropriately. So sync foldered like resume. You can add, documents to individual pages. You know what, that's a great question. I don't know if you can actually search for those documents within the pages, but I know that documents can be added to individual OneNote pages. So that's a great question. I'll actually look into that. I'm not sure. There's a great tool suggestion. Clean up conversation. Yep. That's similar to Ignore. It's great. Yeah, time saver when you're back from vacation. I was in Poland for 2 weeks back in June, and man, did I have a pile of email to dig through when I got back. Anybody else thoughts on stuff that you can apply immediately, or any other questions or efficiency tips that you want to share? Why are you not using quick steps in Outlook? Great question. So quick steps in Outlook is a little different from quick parts. Quick parts are just text blocks. Quick steps are kind of like macros, where you can initiate an email sent to a group of people, or you can automatically move stuff into a folder or something like that. It's a little different, and I do actually use quick steps. And it was one of the things that I chose not to cover here today because of the time constraint, but yeah, quick steps is definitely a good productivity tool. If you email certain people regularly, great way to help grab back some time.
Amy?
Yeah.
So that was my question, right? So I guess one of the reasons why I asked that question is because you can use quick steps to do all your responding as well with templates and all that.
Yeah, there are so many different tools within Outlook. Yeah, I think it's actually a wonderful use of quick steps. And I'm curious, like, how much time do you think you saved using that? Probably.
Yeah, like a ton, right? Because we can send back quick replies, and you can set up as many as you want for it. And I guess instead of hitting reply and then hit a couple other buttons, you just hit a quick step, and then it, I guess, populate a reply for you. Yeah, I can show you like offline how I use it, just to, I guess, compare and contrast.
Yeah, the elimination of clicks and navigation steps, always a time saver. I mean, you add those up over the course of a week, month, or a year, and you'll save yourself hours of time. Dan, I don't see any other questions. So yeah, again, please, if you have follow-up questions or want to talk about this more, I'm available. Just shoot me an email, tweet at me, connect with me. I'm pretty easy to find out there.
Amybeth, Monica Dewan had wrote a comment about create rules in Outlook, which she says is definitely a big time saver. Can you want to speak to that for just a sec?
Oh yeah. Yeah, creating rules, if you want to auto filter, emails from certain people or certain groups, or, do a variety of different things within Outlook. The rules are fantastic.
Amber also really appreciated the slide with source strategy, if you don't see that in the chat message.
Oh, probably the bullseye thing. Yeah, that was learned through trial and error.
Well, last chance, everybody. Any final questions for Amybeth before we let her go and resume her busy day? Going once, going twice. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. It was a great presentation. Amybeth, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. There was a question earlier, everybody. This has been recorded. You will all get links to our private YouTube channel, and you can review this and look at the deck one by one, especially if there's an area that you want to practice and play with and experiment with. You should be able to see it and stop the presentation. So I guess we're going to go ahead and let everybody put time back on your calendar. Thanks again, Amybeth. It was fabulous. We really appreciate you spending your time with us today.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.